self-care in the context of owning your power or taking your power back. We're going to frame it a number of different ways and how that dials into your leadership and into your confidence on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis, and how that's the foundation of how you generate yourself in your business and in your life. And we've got a number of different distinctions we're going to cover with Kim today. Before we go any deeper into this particular topic area, though, we want to talk a little bit about SheEO and the Learning Lab. In front of you is our credo, what we stand for here at SheEO. And those of you who are activators know this. Those of you who are joining us who aren't activators, welcome. And you will see that there are a number of significant cornerstones to what SheEO stands for. But just in a nutshell, SheEO got created almost 4 years ago by Vicki Saunders, and it's a radically redesigned ecosystem that supports, finances, and celebrates female innovation and ventures who are creating a better world for all. So in the social innovation space, and it's a completely unique model. It's a new business model that is now around the globe and reflects an entirely new set of values, some of which are reflected here in our credo, designed with a feminist lens, encouraging and celebrating radical generosity. And all of you who are activators are also radically generous because of the way our model works. So the model brings together over 500 women, which we call activators, and some of you are on our Learning Lab in regions around the world who contribute about 1,100 Canadian dollars, make your quick translations into the different spaces. And it's pulled together and then loaned out at a 0% to our 5 women-led ventures that we get to choose as activators in our different regions. And that's a very exciting process. And as we head into reactivation season, it means we're also going to have a chance to see some new ventures and to be able to decide who we'd like that next pool of money to go to in the new year. The loans are paid back within 5 years and then loaned out again. So you can see the cyclical nature and the perpetual fund that exists. So the Learning Lab is an extension of the SheEO global community, and it's an opportunity for us to showcase, but also to share the incredible wisdom, knowledge, expertise, and experience of our network. Who I am and why I lead this? Well, my name is Marisha Charsky, and I am an activator. Just reactivated again on Monday for a new year. And I am an entrepreneur. I have 2 companies. My core business is with Velocity Partnership, where I lead human-centered design innovation programs around the world. And I also have a network which is for entrepreneurs called Entrepreneurs Velocity. And that leverages my over 10 years of coaching small and mid-sized enterprises, predominantly women, but also male-led enterprises also. And before we go any further, this would not be possible without our sponsor, which is True Shield Insurance, and we are going to hear a word from them.
At True Shield Insurance, we're passionate about helping entrepreneurs manage the risks of running their business. So when SheEO approached us about helping out with their new Learning Lab initiative, how could we say no? We're very proud to be a part of providing online resources for entrepreneurial women who want to grow and succeed in business. Glad you can join us. All of us here at True Shield are super excited about being a part of the wonderful work that SheEO is doing.
So thank you to True Shield and their generous sponsorship of the Learning Lab so we can do this work, which we love to do. Now, I would like to say a little bit more about this lab and what we say, which is your opportunity to juice your Learning Lab, make it yours, make it valuable. So if you haven't already done so, and I've seen some of you saying hello and opening up your chat, please go to your screen, and at the top, you'll see the opportunity to actually open up your chat box, say hi, but tell us where you are zooming in from. That's always the fun part, to see where in the world you're all coming from. As Kim is sharing her key points and working through our Learning Lab today, you can be sending questions, and I will do my best to ask those questions in the moment. But after we formally end the Learning Lab at 10 minutes to the hour, there'll be an additional Q&A that you can join. We know that at about 10 minutes to the hour, some of you will have other responsibilities like in Eastern time zone, possibly putting your kids to bed, or some of you are finishing up work and you need to get home, or you are in the middle of your workday and you just need to get to another meeting. So whatever you need to do, we're giving you 10 minutes from the end of our Learning Lab to do that. So that's our Q&A. You can also join our Learning Lab Slack space and live out loud on social. So what we're talking about there is our radical generosity hashtag. And these are the different ways you can let people know that you are joining us right now in this learning lab, and the different nuggets, insights, and ideas that you're garnering from our guest, Kim. And also being a business coach, this is my business hat on. If you haven't already done so, please download your Insights to Action Canvas. I always say that insights are great, but unless you actually put down some next steps about what you might do with that idea, it just may dissipate. So you'll get inspired in the moment, and I know you will with Kim's work today, but let's put some action items down, maybe 2 next steps that you will take to support yourself or someone else in your network as a result of what you're learning today and what you're inspired by. So that's your Insights to Action Canvas. Finally, we are here, Kim. I would like to introduce to you Kim Knight. She is from the Art of Health, based in New Zealand. And this is her topic for today, which she has a very interesting story into her journey to being in this space. I learned a lot of that from Kim. We had a great pre-conversation to set ourselves up, and we've got some interesting key points to cover. So Kim, over to you in terms of this idea of self-care as the basis for growth in business and in life. Say a little bit more about that, and also your journey to this particular space that you're in. Oh, you're on mute, Kim.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
One question I've got, should I be seeing slides or just you?
I just got the slides myself. You should be seeing me. And
okay, good. Yeah, I thought I was going to be seeing slides. Okay. So, yeah, self-care. To put it in a nutshell, because it could take, an hour just to share the story, I became very ill 20 years ago. Actually, it started longer than that, 30 years ago, with clinical depression, which then progressed into chronic fatigue syndrome, which then progressed into not being able to work for 10 years. And I had to search very long, hard and deep to find, well, why am I ill? Because nobody seemed to be able to tell me what the cause was. And I went to many therapists, I went to many doctors, I went to specialists, and nobody seemed to be able to give me the answer. But just through sheer perseverance and trying over 200 therapies, I finally pieced together, what is it that creates illness? And that could be physical or mental illness. And what is it that one needs to do to get well? And I discovered that we do have the capacity to heal from the inside out, because our body is a self-healing mechanism. But we need to know, first of all, what's causing the problem. And then we need to know, sorry, I had the flu last week, what solutions to apply. And so once I learned these key pieces, which was a lot to do with stress reduction, emotional healing, being able to master one's emotions, looking after oneself, taking care of oneself, I was able to heal myself without external interventions, i.e. surgery, supplements, medication. I see those as the 3 main categories of intervention. And my thing is all about helping people do it for themselves, because it's so empowering not to have to rely on a supplement, thinking, well, if I don't take my supplement, I'm not going to get through the day today. Or if I don't take my medication, I'm not going to get through the day today. So it's all about learning. What I do is learning how to, or teaching, and I'd have to do it for myself, how to keep myself on track from the inside out.
Very good. And so your journey, which went over a number of years, And now we get to sort of hear a succinct sort of cover of you looking in the rearview mirror and some of the key points about that. Is there anything specific just about the what of this, like this need for self-care and the connection back to growth in business and in life? Do you want to say a little bit more about that in terms of how you see that projecting out from just being vital and well to the impact in business and in life?
Well, we can't really we can't really separate how we are in personal life and in business, because we're a person, and that person, you know, is in our personal life and is in our business life. So the state of your mind and your emotions, which is what drives everything, will impact how you perform in your business.
And Kim, I imagine this is a receptive group that are all nodding their heads, but what's been your experience of bringing this message to organizations and speaking like this? I mean, is there pushback to that particular concept, or has that evolved a lot over the last couple of years? Like, what are you experiencing when you start to speak to those important points and to that connectedness?
Well, I haven't actually done a lot in organizations. I'd like to do more, but I that's not been my path to date. I've been mainly working with people in a one-on-one capacity and in groups, but more in a public capacity rather than a business organization capacity. I've also spoken a lot of conferences, medical conferences. So it's quite a niche market. And what I notice is that obviously people are open to it, and they sit and nod. I'm talking more the medical conferences here, not the one-to-one. They'll sit and nod and go, wow, I really enjoyed your presentation and I really like what you have to say. But then, like you were saying at the beginning, if you don't have the tools and strategies to actually put into practice, then it's just an interesting talk that they listen to. And the other thing that I notice in general, from what I have seen of what I call the corporate, culture, is that they're only really dealing with things at a surface level in many ways, both from their understanding, from their strategies. They don't really go very deep. It's quite a surface level approach, and that's better than nothing, but it needs to go deeper for a lot of people.
Right. So I guess one of the opportunities here for us all as women who are leaders in our own domain is to just take a moment and do almost like a personal check-in in regards to what you're talking about here and how this is for us. Because sometimes we can project out and look at others, but take a really important look at our glimpse into ourselves and be honest about how we're taking this on for ourselves, or whether we sometimes avoid this important conversation of our own well-being.
Yes.
All right, well, let's get into our first point. And oh my goodness, I just saw that we have someone zooming in from the Philippines, which is fantastic. Hazel and Grace, thank you for, I think that's the first time on the Learning Lab we've had someone joining us from the Philippines. And I've seen a lot of great places where you're coming in from, but I do have to do a special shout out because that's a first for us, so welcome. So let's move to the first point here, and we're calling them drivers. Let go of perfection to create your next level of great work. Sounds hard to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and I don't know if it's more women than men, it seems to be a very strong theme for women, is this thing that we have to do things perfectly. And often we don't even know that we've got that belief, that theme going on in our mind. But what tends to happen is that we never think that what we're doing is good enough.
Yes.
And what that really comes down to, and this is like really the core theme of everything that we're going to be talking about today, it comes back to, well, I don't feel good enough. It's one of the biggest core themes in people's lives, including my own, is this deep, unconscious, limiting belief that I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough to offer, and therefore I have to prove myself to be good enough. And I have to work harder, and I have to push myself harder, and I have to get more people's approval and all that sort of stuff. And it is so damaging, because and we never give ourselves enough, positive encouragement, feedback to ourselves. And it all goes back, because through the one-on-one work that I've done, where I basically have specialized in working with people who have these themes so strongly that they drive every thought, every behavior, every action, and then lead them to extreme sickness. And it's one of the most important things to heal and to turn around, is this belief that we're not good enough.
So let's say we're nodding our head going, yeah, I recognize that in myself. I beat myself up. I might get, 12 great pieces of feedback on a facilitation, but then there are 2 negative ones, and I focus all my attention on the negative ones. What are your thoughts in terms of actually letting go or turning that around? What have been some of the coaching you provide your clients to help alleviate that strong internal dialogue?
Oh, there are so many things, and I know that not everything is going to come to mind in this moment, but we have to increase the self-love and the self-appreciation. So we have to start, and we can do it as a daily exercise where, every day we find at least 5 things that we appreciate about ourselves, and maybe 5 things that we're grateful for in general, and 5 things that we can do that demonstrate self-love and self-care, whether that's going for a walk, or cooking a nice meal, or just going out in the sunshine, or whatever it is. We have to increase the positive stuff, the self-care. And then that starts to rewire the brain, and we start to appreciate ourselves more. Yes.
One of our participants was talking about Golnaz, about being radically generous with ourselves. And, that self-talk, right? That goes on, that internal dialogue, is to turn it around and in the moment catch it. And it sounds rather simple, but it's to actually take the time out and to have that. It's like doing exercise, it sounds like, Kim.
Well, it needs to be, these self-care practices need to be just like getting up and brushing your teeth. They have to become a habit and a routine. And they can be done at any time during the day, but at the beginning of the day, what we do at the beginning of the day really dictates how the rest of our day goes.
Right.
So, for example, I have a program for stress reduction, and I found that there are 5 key areas that people need to focus on to really totally, I call eradicate stress, not just reduce stress, but eradicate it. And I've lost my train of thought there. One of the things that we have to do is to really look at all our daily habits, everything that we do from morning till night, and really assess, what is the impact of everything that I think, everything that I do, how does it make me feel?
Yeah.
How do I perform? We really have to assess every little thing that goes on in our life and become very self-aware.
Yes. And back to what Golnaz is saying here about saying no to things that truly aren't aligned and practicing healthy boundaries. Assess with self-compassion. Just another way, in some ways, of saying what you're saying here. Is how she's framing it in our chat, which is terrific. Thank you for that, Golnaz. Let's go to number 2 on our.
I just want to add one more thing, just from what you said. The
Yes.
self-compassion.
Yes.
Self-compassion is huge, because it comes back to the beating ourselves up, putting ourselves down, expecting too much of ourselves, pushing ourselves too hard. And usually when we're in that pattern, we're doing it, and it's just such a normal habit and has become a norm for us that we don't even know that we're doing it. And then we'll get a glimpse into, oh my God, actually, I'm being quite hard on myself here.
Yeah.
And if we were to imagine, if we were treating somebody else, our own best friend, the way we were treating us in terms of how we're thinking about ourselves and what we're saying to ourselves, would our best friend or would still want to be our friend?
Yes.
And, you know, most probably not. So we really have to increase the gentleness on self and the self-compassion.
Yes. Yeah. You know, and it's been my experience sometimes when talking to people about this, they'll feel like they get lazy. They'll get lazy if they don't talk to themselves that way. Like it's somehow that will create greatness as opposed to it actually kills off greatness in the long run.
Well, one of the problems in our society, and it's getting worse, is that we live in a crazy busy world. And there is no doubt in my mind that everything going digital and online has actually increased that, you know, especially with social media. And there's lots of positive things about social media. You know, you can really connect in, you can learn about a lot of things which you wouldn't know about otherwise. But it's like this constant, you know, on switch. And we've really been living in what we could call a patriarchal society for hundreds of years, where the male, you know, point of view has dominated. And I'm not against men. I don't know what the word for that is, but just from an energetic perspective, on a collective consciousness level, it's been a very male dominated, you know, society. And apparently things are, you know, really starting to shift, you know, for example, with Shio to females coming into their power. But what a lot of females have been doing is trying to be powerful in a male way.
Yes.
We're very different. And one of the, you know, we have what we call laws of life and laws of the universe, which we as humans, we're part of nature. There are laws of nature, and we have to live in harmony with these laws of nature. For example, the seasons. There are seasons which nature follows, and if man is intelligent, will also follow. But most people have got very out of touch with these natural laws. And so, for example, they're always pushing themselves as if it's summertime, right, you know, 360 days of the year. And they're not recognizing that in winter we need to slow down, for example. So the tree loses all its leaves, the sap goes into the center of the tree in winter because it needs to regenerate and it needs to rest. And one of the problems in our society, and I see it as one of the biggest problems, is that people are driving themselves and not resting enough. And under the law of yin and yang, yang being activity and yin being quiet and stillness, we do not have enough stillness, which is why we must do practices like qigong, meditation, you know, mindfulness, stillness. We must. That's the only way to regenerate the mind and ultimately the body, is through these types of practices.
Thank you. It's really good. Can we go to the next point now, Kim? Because I like this next headline we have here. So kick imposter syndrome to the curb. I like the sounds of that.
So can you just give me your definition, because I think it will be useful for everybody, of what imposter syndrome is?
Well, the way I would describe that is that you feel like you're a fraud. So you're up there and you're doing what you're doing and you're saying what you're saying, but deep down in your own bones, you don't quite believe it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that, just, I mean, you know, just so that everybody's on the same page here. So, you know, imposter syndrome, it still comes back to the same theme of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm of no value, etc., etc., etc. And I mean, if I'm brutally honest, which I am, and one of the things I tend to do is I'm what I call a WYSIWYG, which means what you see is what you get, is that before getting on this call, I had imposter syndrome coming up because of what's been going on for me over the past week, which happened, you know, after we initially set this, you know, this webinar up, where I got triggered into quite a deep depression, which I haven't had for years, because of some things that happened and some challenges that I'm facing in my life right now. And so I went into the space of, well, what have I got to offer? How can I possibly come on this webinar when, you know, I've been feeling so bad sometimes, you know, in my head. But yesterday I was at a Chamber of Commerce expo. They have every twice a year they have an expo, and people come and put their tables out, and people, you know, it's a business networking event. And I had arranged months ago to be at this expo, really didn't feel like going, but went, set the table up. And I had people coming up to talk to me, you know, seeing my banner about health and, you know, stress and this, that, and the other. And as I was talking to them, I could still recognize, well, actually, I do know what I know. You know, even though I've got this, you know, depression, you can't take away the knowledge and the wisdom that I've learned over the past 25 years. It's still there, and I can still offer it. And I still know more than these people who don't know as much as me. And therefore, you know, and I could see that I was being of value still, even in the space that I was in. So we have to recognize that we have something of value to offer, but ultimately that the real value is in recognizing that we are innately of value, even if we didn't have anything to offer. And that's the biggest thing for a lot of people. Now, I mean, a good example is if you imagine if you have a cat or a dog, right? They don't actually do anything. They sit around and you feed them and they wag their tail or excuse me, or they come up and smooch against you. But you know, they're not doing anything per se. And yet we absolutely love them unconditionally because of who they are. And that is what human beings need to learn to be able to do. And so few human beings really are able to do that. They're not able to do it towards other people, and they're not able to do it even more towards themselves. We've got to learn absolute unconditional self-acceptance and self-love.
So I've never heard that said quite that way, and I think that's quite fascinating. And do you think it's animals' ability to be present? Like they're just with you in the here and now, it seems, that has something to, I'm just curious because it's such an interesting way to describe that you're just being and they are loved and adored. I mean, they're also pretty cute, but you know.
Well, they don't judge. It's the same as if you go out in nature, you could scream at a tree. You could be, somebody might be very shy of taking their clothes off, but if they're out in nature, they don't care if a tree or a plant, is there seeing them naked. It's one of the things that human beings really fear the most is being judged. And it all goes back to everything, all this patterning, this programming is set up in the first 7 years of life, where we learn I'm not good enough. I have to perform to feel good enough, because if I don't do X, Y, Z, then I'm not going to get the approval from my parents or my caregivers. And we just have this big, deep paradigm that I'm not good enough unless I do X, Y, and Z. So, animals don't judge. Nature doesn't judge. Humans judge. Yeah. And we have these patterns. And in one of the trainings that, I've trained in and deliver, is that we have what we call 10 fundamental patterns of human nature, and these patterns have to be mastered. For example, negativity and pessimism, avoiding and hiding, self-centeredness. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but we have to learn. We have to recognize these patterns in ourselves, and then if we choose, then we learn to dismantle them and come back to what we call our true self, because most people are living from what we call a false self, which is the ego and the patterns and all the beliefs and the limitations, etc., etc. And underneath all of that, and Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about this, if you go deep down, then you reach your true self. And ultimately, we're all connected, we're all interconnected, and we're all one. And ultimately, that is where everybody is wanting to go. That is the ultimate goal. It is the main goal in life, is what we call self-realization and wisdom. And that's certainly my goal. It has definitely been my goal for some time now, and it's just becoming stronger and stronger at the recognition that is the real goal in life. We have all the surface things like I want to run a business and I want to be successful, but ultimately we want to be happy. We want to actually be our true self.
Right. Eckhart Tolle's work, of course, is the power of now, which is being present. So I think what's interesting about that, though, is that we also have to be careful not to have external measures to grant ourselves, good and bad or valuable. So sometimes we also can't drink our own Kool-Aid of feeling good about all the great praise, because if that praise was to shift, it could knock us right off our feet, I would gather.
Yes, it still comes back to valuing ourselves from deep within, and not being due to anything external. Ultimately, it has to be, we have to totally be able to believe in ourselves. But in order to really, truly be able to do that, we have to be connected with our true self. That is the ultimate way of achieving that.
And, Kim, thanks so much for sharing your story. And it really reflects all the work you've done and how hard you work, that still there are moments where we can go to that dark space no matter how much work we've done, and not to let that mean, oh gosh, I can't get out, I would gather. That you now have the muscle to help pull yourself out, and to some degree because of the fact you've been doing this work for as long as you have.
Yes, well, I mean, I was quite clear that what happens is, the more personal development work you do, the more aware you become, and the more you witness what is happening rather than being totally embedded and embroiled in it. And it was very clear to me that what I've been going through is what is called a healing crisis. And a healing crisis is part of a yin-yang cycle after a stress phase or going through some sort of healing. And I've been doing some very deep healing work over in Europe in August. And I came back to New Zealand, and a whole range of things happened, and it just triggered the healing crisis. And it is, even though it feels like absolute crap, we have to go through this phase. And it's one of the most misunderstood things around healing, is that often when we have symptoms, they're actually the body going through the healing phase of a complete healing cycle. And so this is where we have to have, the radical self-care and self-compassion, and to ride it through and actually accept it, rather than, surrender to it rather than fight it. Because most people, whenever they have any type of symptom, they're trying to resist it and push it away because they don't want it. In fact, I saw a post on Facebook just yesterday by somebody, and he said, he was saying, I've got cancer and I'm going to fight this beast.
Yeah.
And I said, no, it's not a beast. The symptoms are your friend. They're trying to tell you something. And the principle of Aikido is that if you get on the same side as your enemy, then both win. Everybody wins.
Yes. Well, that's really interesting, because when you talk about the physical body, and if someone was to pull a hamstring, so the back of the thigh, you can't fight yourself out of an injury. You have to actually go, okay, now I need to take care of myself. I can't do that sport. I can't do whatever that is, because the muscle will never have a chance to heal. But it's funny, when it comes to this domain, we just feel like we have to muscle ourselves through it, as opposed to, okay, what am I need to take a step back, learn, and then be able to allow this to flow through and to get to the other side.
Especially in our society where, we're fed all the time with adverts on television, like, you've got the flu, well, take this medication and you'll feel better straight away, and then you can carry on. If you've got the flu, your body is trying to heal itself from something. The reason it's creating the symptoms is A, for the healing, but B, because it needs to take you out so that you can have a rest. And we're in this busy, crazy society in our first world. Well, in the third world, they won't be doing that. They'll be resting in the Amazon jungle or up in the Nepalese mountains. But in our first world, it's like, no, I just have to push through. I have to keep going, etc., etc. We're so out of touch with what we really need.
Yes, which would also be out of touch with who we really are, right?
Yes.
And value that we can bring, our unique abilities. May I move to our third point? Anything else you want to share about this? Okay. Let's continue on here. So number 3, tap into your intuition when it matters most.
Well, we all have intuition, and our intuition is actually an inner tutor. And one of the really interesting things that I've been studying for years, but still a lot of people don't know, is that we have 3 brains in our body. We literally have 3 brains. So the definition of a brain is a network of neurons with intelligent purpose. And we have not just the brain in the head, which has billions of neurons. We also have a network of neurons in our heart with millions of neurons, and a network of neurons in our gut. And each brain has a different role. So the head is to do with analyzing and rationalizing and thinking and coming up with creative solutions. So more, thinking. The heart brain is to do with feelings and relating and emotions. And it's also a gateway to the soul, whatever you believe that to be. And the gut is about survival and safety and, whether something is right for us, safe for us. And it's also our sense of self. So we need to be able to use all 3 brains. And most people sort of relate intuition to the heart. Something feels right. But really we need to be using all 3 brains. Because when we do, then we come into integrity, in alignment, and integer, the word integer means one. So we come into alignment, and it's just like lining everything up like ducks in a row. And then we start to operate from a place of wisdom, which is a higher level of functioning. So people, for example, like Ken Wilber, who is a great mind in transformation of human consciousness. And he did a program a couple of years ago called Superhuman OS, in other words, Superhuman Operating System. And really, and I was listening to him talking. I didn't listen to the whole program, but really he was reiterating what my Qigong teachers have been saying and what Qigong masters have been saying for thousands of years, which is we haven't even begun to tap our true potential as human beings. And I remember my first Qigong teacher saying, humans think they're so intelligent, but actually we're still in kindergarten. And this is really, really true. In Qigong, because I've been training in Qigong for 18 years now. And Qigong isn't just, for people who don't know what Qigong is, they've probably heard of Tai Chi. They're probably very familiar with what that looks like. Qigong is a branch of, well, actually Tai Chi is a branch of Qigong, but Qigong are ancient exercises for evolving the consciousness and for improving health in every aspect of a human being. So that's mind, emotions, consciousness, physical body, everything. One of the things that we learn, through Qigong is that as you implement the exercises, your consciousness evolves and you develop what are called special abilities, which are abilities which people would normally think would say are miraculous, feats, but actually they should be normal. So what is special should be normal. But we're so out of touch with our real abilities as human beings that we don't even know what we're capable of. So we really are still in kindergarten. We have all this technology and we think we're so clever, but we haven't mastered our own technology. This is what we have to do. We have to master our inner technology, not the outer technology.
So it sounds like this is all obviously dovetailing one on top of the other, but the practices you're describing here, you have found have supported your ability to be more intuitive when you've been doing Qigong and practices like that?
Yeah, sorry, I probably went off on a tangent there.
No, that's okay. I'm just curious because.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they develop everything simultaneously. And I've done a lot of, one of the ways that I started getting in touch with intuition, and I didn't even know I was doing it at the time. I didn't really know what was happening until later. It was when I was sick and I was unable to work and I was at home. And one day, it was the strangest experience that I've never had anything similar, since, where this voice very clearly in my head said, how would it be if you only did what you felt like doing rather than what you thought you should do? And you practice that every day for a year. You just literally lived your life every day tuning into what's the feedback from inside my body over this decision, that decision, this choice, that choice. And I made an agreement internally. It was almost like I shook hands with this voice. It was so bizarre, and said, okay, I'm going to commit to this for a year, because I didn't really have anything else to do at the time. I was at home, sick, unable to get out the house most of the time. And so I started training myself without realizing it in how to listen to what I call my body intelligence, which is the internal feedback that comes from the heart and the gut. Now, I didn't know this at the time. I only learned about the three brains and the technicalities of that years later. But what I was doing was just literally listening very intently to what's the feedback inside my body when I have a thought or when I go to make a decision. And rather than overriding it with the head, which is what a lot of us do, you walk out and you go look at an umbrella and you think, should I take that? And you think, oh, no, it's not going to rain. But that was the intuition giving us a little clue that, an hour later it's going to rain. So I'd go into the kitchen, look at the dishes, and my head would say, you should do the washing up. And my heart would say, but I don't feel like it. And I go, okay, well, I'm not going to do it, because I'm just going to listen to what my heart's saying rather than what my head's telling me I should do. And I did that with every little decision. And by the end of the year, everything had completely changed inside me so that it became automatic. And this is one of the big things that I teach people, and that people have to learn, especially if they're ill, because they're being ruled by the head, which is overriding. And there's a part of the brain, which we call the rational mind, which comes up with rationalizations or rational lies as to why we think we should do something. But if the heart and the gut aren't on board as well, and we don't have this alignment, then it's possibly not the right thing. Maybe even probably not the right thing.
And Kim, are there other, it's almost to me like turning up one part of your body's volume and turning down the volume in other parts of your body. Are there any other practices that could support us and maybe having the gut or even the heart speak more loudly to us than what we often just use as our brain?
Well, any stillness practices, such as meditation and Qigong, are going to increase our ability to listen to our heart and our gut. I have a technique which I can't share here because it has to be taught in a proper way, called authentically, which has like about 25 positive effects, but it's all about teaching people how to listen to themselves, how to put themselves first without feeling guilty, how to say no if they need to say no. And it's all about how to listen to the gut and the heart and trust it. Because one of the things that we have to do is that we have to rebuild trust. It's one of the biggest things that is missing is trust on 3 levels: trusting ourselves, trusting other people, and trusting life. And in one of our Qigong practices, we have what we call the 5, it's a 5 Shin practice, and Shin means the heart. So we have 5 qualities that every human being needs to develop and cultivate in their heart. We have to cultivate trust, then openness, love, gratitude, and respect. And we absolutely have to cultivate these qualities in order to grow as a human being. Yeah.
Well, and there's, some of the women in our chat room are sharing some different ways into learning more about this, but certainly when you start getting into that network, you mentioned Ken Wilber, and I'm familiar with him, and there's spiral dynamics, and there's a bunch of different elements that once you start to discover, you discover more and more and more, and the different people that exist and work in this space. And then there's the food component that can probably wrap into this too, right? Our nutrition and what we put in our bodies and how that can support us to be more present, etc.
Oh, definitely. Got to take out sugar, gluten, dairy. Absolute no sugar.
Yeah. Let's move to your 4th point here as we move through. So stay confident when interacting with people treating you without respect. How does one stay confident when interacting with people treating you without respect?
Well, We have to learn how to, first of all, we have to learn to recognize if we're being treated or not being treated with respect, because often if we are constantly attracting that, you know, whether it's a partner, somebody at work, parents, siblings, whatever it is, it will again be a pattern. And it comes back to, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, there's something wrong with me, whatever, and therefore we tolerate that behavior. So the very first thing is to become aware that it's actually happening, because people, you know, are in emotionally, psychologically, maybe physically, sexually abusive relationships, as I was many years ago, and I didn't even know that I was in an abusive situation. So the first step is recognition, and that is the first step with any problem, is recognition that there is a problem.
Yes.
And then accepting without judgment, without beating ourselves up, you know, this is where the self-love comes in, and then doing something about it. So we have to learn how to say no. And there are ways, you know, that's part of my Authentic Me program is, you know, how we do that in a step-by-step fashion. But at the same time, we have to increase, you know, we have to work on our self-worth and our self-love and our self-appreciation. We've got to keep growing that up. And as we do that, then automatically we will no longer tolerate the sort of behavior that we previously put up with.
And when you're saying all that, that sounds like quite a journey all on its own.
It is. The funny thing is, you know, I've worked with hundreds of women over the past 12 years with chronic illness, you know, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel, what you could name 100 different conditions, but all sort of fairly chronic symptoms. And the number one thing that they have to do, apart from the self-care, is the putting themselves first, stopping people, you know, treating them badly. It's the number one thing. It's so common. It's so necessary. It's so misunderstood.
Yes.
It's so essential.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's fair.
Sorry, just to add in, and this ties in with the listening to the three brains.
Yes.
And listening to the feedback from the gut when it's saying, no, that's not right for me. Listening
Yes.
to the feedback from the heart when it's saying, no, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed somebody put, you know, multiple bit integration in the chat. Yeah, that's one of the methods that I've trained in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and that comes back into the trust. We've got to learn to retrust ourselves.
Well, and you know, as you're saying all this, it conjures for me the need to also be courageous.
Oh yes, and that's the gut. That's one of the gut, because the gut, when we get in alignment with our gut, we start working from a higher. Each brain has a higher level of functioning. So the higher level of functioning for the head brain is creativity. The highest level of functioning for the heart is compassion for self and others, and the highest level of functioning for the gut is courage. And people have always said to me, not that I ever really saw it, but I suppose I sort of do now, is that, oh, you're so courageous.
Yeah, it's lovely. I love that word too. There's something about the word courage that.
Well, it comes from cœur. So courage, cœur, courage, French, heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is your fifth point as we slowly get to the end of our learning lab. Speak authentically to have your voice be heard. And the word authenticity and authentically has been used already a couple times on our learning lab.
Yeah, well, for me, it boils down to we need to take off the masks, and we need to be honest and authentic. And one of the biggest things that I found that people have trouble with is being able to voice what they're feeling, voice honestly what they're thinking or feeling. It's just so funnily enough, one of the programs that I quite like is a program called Say Yes to the Dress, which is all about people buying their wedding dress. I don't know if it's an American program. Mm-hmm. I found my gown and Say Yes to the Dress. They're two different programs. And I just find it quite interesting because I think some of the dresses are just so stunning. But what I've noticed time and time and time again as an absolute recurring theme in that program is that these women are they don't want to, they're afraid of, get their parents getting angry, or their entourage, not liking them, or whatever it is, some fear factor around them saying, well, no, I want this dress. You like that dress, but I don't like that dress. I like this dress. And it's such a huge recurring theme to have this fear of not being able to speak one's truth. But not being able to speak our truth creates a whole heap of problems. And when I discovered the cause of my chronic fatigue, which had me literally bedbound and housebound for 5 years, it came down to me not knowing what I was feeling. In other words, being oblivious to what I was really feeling, all that, the sadness, the frustration, the fear, whatever it was that was inside of me. But B, not being able to communicate it. So we have to learn how to communicate how we're honestly feeling. And again, I do that in the Authentic Me program, is that there's a step-by-step way that we can do that so that we stay safe and it works. But we've got to come back into our power. It comes back to the, what you were saying at the beginning. It's all about self-empowerment, re-empowerment, being true to ourselves, trusting ourselves, having the courage to speak our truth, and to not think that we're going to die, if we do that, because at a deep level, that's actually what's going on. There's a fear that I'm going to die.
Yeah, at the very core. Well, it's interesting you sharing all of this. And if anyone out there in our network is, thinking of opening a business, these could be the 5 drivers to take on to actually go out and become an entrepreneur. If that's, you have an idea or something you want to take out into the world. It's almost like we could have that as the context to going forward, and doing it in a way that you can do it healthily, as opposed to, going out there and burning yourself out. So I was just thinking of that as you were saying all this. It just maps perfectly onto becoming or being an entrepreneur also. So well, Kim, we are now at the end of our formal piece of our learning lab, and we are now going to move into our Q&A. So just as a reminder, if you are saying goodbye to us now, that you take some time and jot down some very important insights that you've garnered from this, and a couple steps you might take. There's a lot that Kim shared that could be things that you go, I think I've been thinking about meditation for a long time. I now need to put in the next steps to make that happen, or I need to be doing X, or there's something you read, a resource here that you might like to read, one of those books. Kim, people can reach you through your company if they had more questions, or specifically something personal that they wanted to share and talk to you about. The Art of Health, is that right?
Yeah, I'll just put a link in the chat if people want to know more, so just type it in first. kimknighthealth.mykajabi.com is an e-learning site that I have with resources, and if people want to know more and be kept informed and get on the newsletter list, the only way to do that is to sign up for one of the free programs.
Terrific.
That's how I create my list, and what I recommend is I have a program called the 9 Pillars of Health Mastery, which are the 9 areas of life that I feel that we need to master. And really all of those boil down to self-care and self-love.
Super.
But it gives more information on self-care if people are interested.
It sounds like a great resource. And Elizabeth, you were asking about a copy of this. Well, what I will tell you, we have no problem sending this out, but it's really those 5 key takeaway points which are important. And you can get all those also on our Learning Lab space inside of the SheEO website. And you can watch this webinar again. You can share it with others. We encourage you to do so. There might be many people in your network or in your family that you think could, garner a lot from this conversation with Kim, or it's a great conversation to have with someone important in your life. Watch this again and maybe have a dialogue around some of this and how that plays out for you in your lives and your family. So with that, thank you for joining us. You may already be dialing off as I'm saying this, but I want to open it up now to who's on our webinar, and any specific questions you have for Kim. You've got her for about another 10 minutes. If you want to type them in, I will read them out to you, Kim, and We can answer any specific questions people have about what you've been sharing or anything in this domain. It really is now for you who's attended an opportunity for you to get questions answered or to go deeper into something that we've been talking about today. So we'll just take a second. Kim's link does not work. Maybe there is a letter missing somewhere. Kim, take a look at that link and see. Sarah jumped into it and says it doesn't work. Thanks for letting us know, Sarah.
I will just check. Just give me a moment.
Elizabeth said it worked fine for her. Hold the horses. Hold the horses. Great. Stacy Anderson. Stacy's question is, what is the first simple step to take, step you would recommend that we could take? Let me say that again. I didn't do a very good job of recreating that question from Stacy. What is the first simple step you would recommend that we could take in this domain?
Can she be more specific, please, in the question?
So maybe when you say be more specific, Kim, do you mean like in what area that you spoke about, or maybe
what is the first simple step you would recommend that we could take towards what? I just need a bit more specificity.
Okay, I'll let you answer that. And Stacy, if you answer that, I will go to another one. Are there any daily activities you'd recommend to overcome imposter syndrome? And that's from Cheyenne.
You know, it's like I'd love to have off-the-shelf solutions and answers to these questions. But what I found is it's different for every person, if I'm really honest. Which is why, when I work with somebody, I spend an hour and a half with them, and actually longer than that, because I have the forms that they fill in before that, to really understand their whole life. Because one of my favorite sayings is, we heal a whole person's life, not a health condition. We don't heal illness, we heal a person and their whole life. And that means that one really needs specifics from that person about, what is their background, what is their current situation, what has happened in their life up until now, what are they doing, what is their level of consciousness, what is their level of understanding. There's just so much information that one really needs to give a proper answer to this question. So I really can't say more than that, apart from be drawn to what you're drawn to. If you're looking for certain self-help practices, then go out, Google, see what flyers appeal to you on a notice board in your local organic shop, and just be followed, be drawn by your heart, because it will always draw you to the right thing. I have about 300 different techniques that I can use with a client. And yeah, I don't mean to be not useful here in my answer, but I really don't know what to blandly, throw out there as a daily practice.
So then, to follow up on that question for Cheyenne, then, if she, where could she go, or do you know where she could go? I mean, there's yourself, Kim, but is there any other resources that she could go and explore what might be an approach for her to have some reflection on, herself, to be able to look at some activities or approaches to address something she's highlighting is important for her?
Just Google whatever your issue is and just see what comes up. There's a lot of sites, for example, natural health sites, where they list lots of different practitioners or lots of different therapies. And it's just a matter of, as I said, being drawn to what appeals. Often things will pop up on Facebook, threads, ads, and as soon as you start, because everything is interconnected, it's like Google and Facebook and whatever. As soon as you start Googling something, searching for something, the AI intelligence behind the scenes knows that you're looking for that, and it'll start putting ads, on your Facebook thread. So, and just go to the, I always find that local organic shops, those sort of places, they have notice boards, and they have notice boards with lots of workshops, you know, and different techniques. That's always a good place to go and find.
Thank you. Hello, Stacey Berry. Thanks for your question. One of our previous guests. She is talking about sleep, which we actually haven't covered a lot of in this conversation. So any thoughts in terms of the amount of sleep, how we could get better sleep from you, Kim, the role that sleep plays in this conversation?
Well, sleep is, again, very individual. So I'm not going to say how many hours sleep people should be getting. We need to have what is I call good sleep hygiene. So that's good sleep routines. But really sleep is not sleeping well is a symptom in itself. And it all comes back to working out, well, why, you know, what is it that is keeping my body stressed and the natural circadian rhythms disturbed so that I can't sleep. And often that will be nothing to do with sleep itself. The sleep is just the non-sleep, or the disturbed sleep is usually the end result of other issues which are not being addressed. And it could be poor habits, it could be not eating the right food, it could be eating food at the wrong time, it could be a daily lifestyle regime not being, you know, conducive to well-being. It could be unresolved issues that we're not addressing. It could be so many things. Again, we have to identify what is it that is disturbing me in my life that I'm not happy about. And then usually if we address those things, then our sleep comes back, you know, back to normal. Yeah. It's just a symptom.
Well, Kim, you know what I'm hearing from everything you're saying is there's no three secrets to fill in the blank here. There's no secret pathway. There's no one approach. And I guess we should be wary if we start to read about, you know, people explaining or declaring that they have the 3 or the 5 hidden secrets to the answers to what we're talking about here. That's, for us, it's a flag.
It's a really great point you make, because it's one of the biggest things that people want is they want an instant answer. We live in a world of, you know, instant gratification and instant solutions. And as I clearly learned on my journey, it doesn't work like that. We have to put in a lot of work to really get to know ourselves and understand ourselves and work out what is right for me, which is why, you know, there's a million diets out there. There is no one diet that is right for every single person. That's just like there's no one religion that is right for every person. We have to go on a journey of self-discovery and find out what is it that I need and what is it that I need to create my optimal life. And that will be different for every single person. And I mean, I remember once a lady coming in, I used to do massage, and she walked into the room and said, it wasn't just massage, it was a very specific healing massage. And she sat down and said, so am I going to be fixed in one session? And I said, no. And she didn't come back. And this is so common. And this is the, you know, how the medical system in general works, is that you take a medication and you don't really have to think about why you've got the problem, and within a week or two, you know, think the medication will be working, and then I just carry on with my life. Well, that's just a plaster. It's not dealing with the root cause. We have to be prepared to put in the work to really understand ourselves so that we can master ourselves.
Thank you for that. It's great. Now, you know, as you're talking, I'm looking at the chat because there's a lot of great dialogue going on there too, and some super resources people are sharing. And I love some of the names of the books, but I do have to do a shout out for Brené Brown because I do love her work. It's been very compelling, and all the other authors too. I can see there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's a lot of amazing things being written, and so we know we're in a space here that is, to your point, a couple of clicks and we can access this pretty easily. And you know, one of the things that we say at CEO is that, you know, if your business is working but your life isn't working, it doesn't matter. Like it is a very important part and critical part of what we do. And MJ Ryan, I don't think MJ's on our call today, but I know that we're like-minded as coaches in the importance of the mindset and the well-being of our clients as well as their business. It's just interconnected. You can't separate the two as you started this. We have got time for one more question here. I'm just looking through. Getting some high fives, Kim, for the conversation that you've been having with us, people acknowledging that. So you can take a look at that.
Thank you.
People sharing apps for sleep. If you have a problem falling asleep, to help you calm yourself, maybe meditate before going to bed. Okay, here's a message. I'm going to read this just right what it is. I have put my career interests on hold while taking care of my family during my husband's severe depression. Now he's nearly, quote unquote, better. I'm feeling empty. I'm sorry, not empathy. I'm feeling empty. Do you have recommendations for tuning into our inner voice again?
Well, if we want to listen to our inner voice, then we have to go inwards. And it's an interesting thing that in our world, and it's one of the things that we learn to reverse, if you like, through Qigong training, is that we're always going outwards with our senses. So we're looking outwards with our eyes, our ears, we're talking, we're going out into the external world, which literally drains our energy. And this is why we need these practices where we come inwards and we take the time to stop and be still, because all the answers that we could ever need are inside of us. They truly, truly are, because our true self is within us. Whatever you want to call it, true self, higher self, God, whatever word you want to put in it, it's closer than close. It is who we truly are, and it has all the answers. But in order to access them, we have to take the time to be still.
Right.
So, yeah, and it sounds like, potentially, looking after her husband with severe depression, which would be quite hard work. There's also been a draining of one's own resources, putting the other before the first, before oneself. So it's time to look after you and ask you, what is it that I need? So you can ask yourself, what do I need?
Yes.
Just ask the question, what do I need? Do I need fun? Do I need some variety? Do I need go out and see some friends? Do I need some stillness? Do I need all of that? What do I need? So just be still, close the eyes, come down into the belly, do belly breathing from the belly, and get in tune with the inner voice.
Yes, or a good laugh or a good cry. Something in that domain. Kim Knight, thank you so much for your time and for sharing, your stories, your very personal stories, being so vulnerable with us, and your insights and your expertise. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our fantastic community. The discussion on our chat has been just outstanding. I've been so split back and forth as I've seen the commentary going by. So as usual, it's always a very heartfelt and informative chat that goes on, and that is a reflection and a reaction to what our guest is sharing. So Kim, thank you. Just a reminder, everyone, you can join our Slack channel to continue the dialogue with all these great women who are in our chat. You can also go to our SHIO page to watch this again and learn more about SHIO if you aren't an activator and are now curious because this is your first learning lab that you came on board for. And if you want to check out my community for entrepreneurs, it's in early days as it's a startup for me, entrepreneursvelocity.com. And we are going to be back again next month with another guest in our SHIO community as we sort of start to head towards the wrap up of 2018 and Q4, and excited to be back with you next month, closer to Halloween, as we bring our next guest forward. So we also put a shout out on our SHIO workplace site about looking for 2019 guests. So if you know someone or you yourself are interested and there's something you'd like to bring to this community, please let us know, as we're just now starting to look over that and see what our community would like to know more about. So all of you, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great evening, wherever you may be in this wide world of ours, and good to spend this time with you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.